so much of the real work happens before that, in our own minds, long before we ever take the actual step. Hello, my friend, and welcome back to episode 192 of Redefining Midlife. I'm Jo Clark, and this is a podcast where each week we have honest conversations about navigating midlife together, as well as with guest experts and real stories from women who are just like us. Now, if you haven't already, hit follow so that you never miss an episode. And if today's conversation does land for you, I'd love it if you could just share it with a friend who also needs to hear it. Right, so in today's episode, we're talking about something I think that every single one of us in this stage of life comes up against. Now, starting something new when you're scared, it's not easy. Hey, you know that feeling. There's something sitting in the back of your mind. Maybe it's ending something that isn't working anymore. Maybe it's moving somewhere brand new for you. Maybe it's putting yourself out there again after a long time of playing it safe. Maybe it's a new job or a role that you keep on thinking about, but you haven't applied for. Maybe it's a hobby that you used to love and you want to pick back up again. Now, whatever it might be for you, whatever that is, it's just been sitting there, quiet but persistent. And every time you get close to doing something about it, that fear shows up right on cue. Your heart starts racing a bit, and then your mind goes straight to all of the ways that it could go wrong. You think about everyone who might judge you, everything that you might lose, every version of this that could end badly. And before you know it, you've talked yourself out of it once again, and you're right back where you started, telling yourself, well, maybe I'll do it next year, maybe when things settle down. Maybe when I feel a little bit more ready. But here's the honest truth. That feeling of being ready almost never comes first. It comes after you've already started. So I want to have a real conversation about that today, because the answer is not about waiting for the fear to disappear. The answer is learning how to start anyway, with the fear sitting right there beside you. And yes, there's no avoiding it. It can feel very uncomfortable. But fear at this stage of our lives is so often actually not about real danger. It's more about being unfamiliar and uncomfortable. We've lived with a certain routine and familiarity in our lives for years, and in many cases, decades. That gives us a certain level of comfort because it's predictable. And the brains of our brains are hardwired to keep us safe, and they'll treat anything unfamiliar as a potential threat, even when it isn't one at all. Your body genuinely can't tell the difference between this could go terribly wrong and this has never happened to me before. So that fluttery, uneasy feeling you get when you think about something that's new isn't proof that you shouldn't do it. A lot of the time, it's just proof that you're about to do something that you haven't done before. That's all it is. And new beginnings feel different for us now than they did when we were younger. When we were in our 20s, everything was a new experience. Starting something new felt like it had endless room either way. We said to ourselves, if it didn't work out, there was always time to try something else, always another chapter waiting. But these days, at our age, it can feel like there are fewer do-overs available to us. And that means it feels like the stakes are higher, like we know exactly what failure costs because we've felt it before, maybe in our jobs, maybe in relationships, maybe in versions of ourselves that we've had to let go of. And then on top of that, there's that quiet comparison that creeps in. It's that feeling that we should have already been further along than we are, that everyone else seems to have it still all figured out while we're still standing at the start line, wondering whether or not to begin. And I hear this so often from the women I talk to, and I understand it deeply because I've felt it too. I've been there. There's a sense of belief, there's a sense or a belief that starting something new at this age needs to be justified somehow, explained, almost apologised for, as if there's a use-by date on becoming something different. And here's the thing about midlife specifically. This stage of life that we're in just is one transition after another, whether we go looking for change or not. Think about it. Our bodies are changing. Our families are changing. The kids are growing up or leaving, or parents are needing more from us. Our relationships, our careers, our sense of who we are, it just all keeps shifting and changing anyway. So learning how to move through the fear isn't something we get to figure out once and then file that away as, oh, we've done and dusted, we've done that. It's just a skill that we need on repeat because the changes are just going to keep on coming, one after another for the rest of our lives. And I want to be honest with you about something. People sometimes assume that because I'm talking about this stuff on the podcast and for a living, I must have figured out how to not feel scared. It wasn't even close. I mean, I felt it the day I chose to walk away from a teaching career that I'd built over decades. I remember sitting with that decision for weeks, my mind running through every reason it was a terrible idea. What if I made a huge mistake? What if I couldn't make this work? What would people think of me walking away from something that was so stable after all of those years and something I was damn good at? And I felt it again when I hit record on the very first episode of this podcast, not knowing if a single person would listen, wondering if I even had anything worth to say. I felt it when I started building this business from nothing, putting myself and my ideas out there in a way I never had before, fully visible, fully exposed to what anyone wanted to say about it. I felt it the first time I posted on Instagram. And I felt it the first time I walked out on stage to speak in front of a room full of strangers. And this is what I've learned after looking back on all of it. If I had waited until I felt ready, until all my fears had settled, until I felt more certain about how it would all turn out, I wouldn't have the life I have today. I had to leave my comfort zone. I had to step into the unknown without any guarantees whatsoever. So when I say this to you, I mean it completely. If you're waiting to feel ready, if you're waiting to feel less scared before you begin, you're going to keep waiting. And the life that you're dreaming of and that you're deserving of is on that other side of the step that you're not wanting to take. It's not on this side of it. The fear didn't go away because I'd done the hard things before, because it showed up every single time. It was dressed up just a little bit differently. But what did change for me wasn't the fear disappearing. What changed was that I stopped waiting for it to leave before I made a move. I started doing the thing with the fear sitting right there next to me and bubbling up inside of me. And somewhere along the way, I learned that I could feel scared and capable at exactly the same time. And then every time I did that, it gave me that evidence that I could do it again and again. So I also want to gently challenge a story that I hear so often from the women I work with. And the story goes, I'm too old to start this now, or I've missed my window, or someone younger would do this so much better than me. You know what? I don't believe that for a second. And I don't think that you should either. This is such an old trope, an old narrative, and it's no longer relevant in this current world. Think about everything that you've lived through to get to this point. The relationships, the losses, the careers, the raising of children, or the building of a life, the hard conversations that you've had, the versions of yourself that you've already had to rebuild from scratch and more than once. You've negotiated, you've problem solved, you've held things together when they felt like they were falling apart. And guess what? You've come out the other side. And that's not nothing. That's an enormous body of skill and resilience that you carry into anything new that you choose to start. You're not starting from zero like you were in your 20s. You're starting with decades of life experience behind you that your 20-something self didn't have. You know yourself better now. You know what you can handle, what truly matters to you, and what you're no longer willing to settle for. That is not a disadvantage. That's an enormous head start. And it's one that I think that we forget we have far too often. And this is something I spend so much time on with the women that I mentor, because I think it's the part that gets skipped over so often. We tend to think the hard part of something new is the action itself, the applying or the showing up or the doing. But honestly, so much of the real work happens before that, in our own minds, long before we ever take the actual step. Part of that work is being honest with yourself that life before this change and life after this change are going to look and feel different. And that's not something to be afraid of. It's actually something that you can prepare for. If you're leaving a job, your days will look different. Your routine will change. The people you see every day might not be the same. If you're starting something new, your identity might shift a little too. The way you introduce yourself, the way you spend your time, even the way you see yourself when you look in the mirror. Even good change asks something of us. And it's completely normal to feel a little bit of grief for the before, even when the after is something that you genuinely want. And again, I see this so often with the women that I work with. They tell me they feel guilty for feeling sad or unsettled about a change they actually choose, as if wanting something new should mean they feel nothing but excitement about it. But you can want the after and still miss the parts of the before. Both things can be true at once. So give yourself permission for that. It doesn't mean that you're making the wrong choice. It just means that you're human and you're paying attention to what you're leaving behind as much as what you're moving towards. Now, here's something that I want you to try. Most of us, when we're sitting with a brand new beginning, spend almost all of our mental energy on what could go wrong. We rehearse that in detail over and over again. We play out the worst case scenario until it feels almost real, until we've actually convinced ourselves we already know exactly how this story is going to end and it's going to end badly. But how often do we spend that same energy imagining what could go right? What if it actually works out? What if this is a thing that brings you back to yourself, the thing that makes you feel like you again? What would it feel like in 6 months or a year from now if you'd actually started? And then picture that properly. Picture how you would feel walking into that new role, or finally doing that hobby again, or waking up to that new chapter of your life. I want you to picture the version of you, the version of you who took the leap, the way you so easily picture the version where it all falls apart. We are so well practiced at rehearsing failure. Most of us could write that script in our sleep. So it's time we just got good at rehearsing what success looks like. Because the truth is, we have absolutely no more evidence for the bad outcome than we do for the good one. We've just spent far more time picturing it in our minds. And here's a question I love asking the women that I work with, and I want to ask it of you too. Now, if your daughter or your best friend came to you right now needing that extra push, needing a few words of support before starting something that scared her, what would you say to her? And I bet you already know. You'd probably tell her that she is more capable than she realizes. You'd remind her that everything she's already gotten through. You'd remind her of all the times she thought she couldn't do something and she did it anyway. You'd tell her that the fear doesn't mean stop. It just means that this matters to you. And that the people who really care about her, well, they'd still be there whether it worked out perfectly or not. And then you'd probably hug her and tell her that you believe in her completely and without any hesitation whatsoever. Now, it's funny, isn't it? How easily that advice comes when it's for someone else. We almost always know exactly the right words of support to offer the people that we love. We just don't seem to say that to ourselves. And we don't say it nearly often enough if we do. And we hold ourselves to a different standard, a harsher one, as if we don't deserve the same kindness that we so freely give away. So today, I want you to borrow your own advice. Whatever you'd say to that person, say it to yourself and out loud if you can. The way you'd say it to someone that you really love. You honestly don't need one enormous act of courage to start something new. All you need is one small low-stakes steps that proves to you that the world won't end. That's it. Starting something new isn't one giant leap. It's just a series of tiny first moves, one after another. And the last one becomes easier. After the last one, it becomes easy because you proved yourself that you can do this. So instead of asking yourself, now, listen, am I brave enough to do this whole thing? Try asking, what's the smallest version of this that I could try this week? What's that little step I could take? So if it's a new career or a job role that you might be just updating your resume or reaching out to a person for a coffee chat. If it's putting yourself back out there, it might just be saying yes to one invitation. If it's a hobby that you used to love, maybe it's just pulling out the supplies and giving yourself 20 minutes with them. Nothing more. Don't make it big. And separate the decision from doing it too. You don't have to decide today whether this is going to change your whole life, whether it's definitely the right choice, whether it's all going to work out exactly how you hoped. All you have to do is to decide whether you're willing to take that next small step. And that's a much smaller decision. And it's the one that actually matters today. Now, if any of this is landing for you, if you've got something that you want to start, but you're not quite sure how to begin or where to even put your first step, well, that is exactly the kind of thing that I work through with women inside my new self-paced program called Rediscover You. Now, it's just a low-cost, self-paced guide, and it's built around the 9 pillars of your life. And it just gently walks through where you are right now and where you actually want to head next. So you're not trying to figure out all of this out alone in your head, going round and round those same thoughts at 2 o'clock in the morning. And what I'm loving at the moment and what's so exciting is that there are lots of women who have already bought Rediscover You, and they are taking those first steps to designing and create their new chapter. Now, if you're interested in this, you can find the link in the show notes or go to joclarkcoaching.com/shop or find me on Instagram whenever you're ready for it. So as we wrap up today's episode, if there's something that you've been sitting on, something that scares you a little just thinking about it, I hope today's chat gave you a different way to look at it. And that our conversation today was just a reminder that you're not starting from nothing. You've got more life experience behind you than you give yourself credit for. You've got more resilience, more wisdom, and more proof that you can handle hard things than you usually stop to acknowledge. Now, the fear you're feeling again, remember, it's not a sign to stop. That's just a sign that it really does matter to you. And waiting for that feeling to go, waiting until you feel completely ready, that's not a strategy, and it's definitely not the answer. It's just a way of staying exactly where you are while the life you want just keeps on waiting for you to show up. So be honest with yourself about what life before and after might look like. Picture what could go right instead of only what could go wrong. And then give yourself the same kind words that you'd give someone that you love. And lastly, pick the smallest possible step and then take it. Because if not now, when? Thank you so much for being here today with me, my friend, and I look forward to being with you again next week. Take lots of care. Bye for now. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, follow, and share it with another incredible midlife woman. And join me next week as we keep creating an amazing second half of life.